we can't get too comfortable ever. Do recognize when you're too comfortable in the room. When you're too comfortable in the room, you might want to go to a room where there's a little bit more discomfort, because where there's discomfort, there's growth. And where there's growth, there's the achievement of the success that you want.
Thank you for coming on. This is called the Real Estate Podcast. We are here in Austin, Texas. And Ricardo, man, appreciate you. I was reading a little bit about your background and going through your website. Personally, I've been in the real estate business for 13 years. I started when I was 17 and I'm 30 now. Okay. And very blessed to be here in Austin, Texas, what we call Opportunity City. Yes. And I don't have a military background, but a lot of my friends and my brother was in the military. So really respect it. And I know there's a ton of value that comes from going through, the discipline and everything that the military can teach you. So anyways, dude, would love to just kind of dive in, hear a little bit about yourself, and let's just start talking real estate and see how we can add value to people.
Awesome, brother. Well, first off, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. I too follow your website and kind of looked you guys up and identified some of the stuff you guys were doing. And I love Austin, by the way. And it sounds like the Round Rock is right outside Austin. So it's cool to look that place up and stuff. But yeah, man. So I don't have as much experience as you do in real estate, but I can speak to some of the kind of newfound challenges, successes we've had as entrepreneurs breaking out into the scene. So just to give you the quick and dirty on our background, man. So myself, as well as Pat Revin, who's my co-founder and partner out of South Carolina, we've both been active duty military for the last almost 7 years now. He and I went to undergraduate pilot training together. I met him. He was a total bro as soon as I met him, and realized that he and I kind of jived and were super symbiotic, man, on so many different levels. And so we were selected to stay back as first assignment instructor pilots. Awesome gig, man. Teaching new dudes how to fly the T6. He was teaching new guys how to fly the T38, flying upside down, just formation in the weather at night. It was awesome, man. It's the stuff of dreams, And so, okay, a couple of years pass. We're having a great time with that. We move on to different aircraft. I go fly the A-10 and the EC-130 here in Tucson, and he's flying the F-16 out in South Carolina. So we're having this conversation about a year ago, man, and about a year and a half ago now. And he's like, "Hey, Ricardo, we need to," because we're heavy into like our finances, thrift savings plan, 401ks, Roth IRAs at this point in our lives, work in the stock market as best as we can. And so he's like, "We need to put our money into a different vehicle." And I'm like, "I absolutely agree with you. We need some more velocity, if you will." And so he's like, "What do you think about real estate?" I was like, "Absolutely, man, let's do it." So you've probably heard this a lot of times, man. Let's buy one single family residence, and then we'll do that every year for the next 20 years. So this was our vision, you know what I mean? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it for listeners who actually have that in mind. I think it's phenomenal. And so that was our starting point. We put an offer in on a couple of different houses here in Tucson. The market's hot, just as it is everywhere else. And we lowballed them, and they didn't accept our offer. They, in most cases, didn't even respond. So we took it back to the drawing table and we were like, "Hey, what can we do differently?" We had an interesting conversation with our realtor at the time, who said, "What do you guys think about duplexes?" I was like, "I've never considered it." I was like, "Is it ×2 on the price? Like if I go find a $200,000 single family residence, is the duplex going to be 400,000? He's like, "No, not at all. There's economy of scale involved, and you can take advantage of a lesser price for the two doors." And I thought, man, this is an awesome concept. Let's dig further. So 2 turned into a 3, turned into a quadplex. We went under contract for a duplex, actually, that fell through for some structural issues during the due diligence period. And then fast forward, man, a couple of weeks, we're still, striking out, man. No, nothing's hitting. I talked to my brother, who's also in the military in Hawaii, and he has a guy working for him named Vince. Vince has like 150 doors out of Michigan and El Paso. And so I said, "Hey, bro," I said, "You were talking to this guy, Vince." I said, "You mentioned him to me before. Can I get a couple of minutes of his time?" So we have this 30-minute conversation one night, man, with Vince. It's a super transformative Zoom conversation. And by the end of that conversation, we left it saying, "Okay, we need multifamily. That's our new landscape, if you will." So we put everything else on hold. We identified how we could stretch our dollars as best as possible. At the time, we were liquid at like 125K each. which allowed for us to get into a $250,000 down payment. And then there's a cold calling, and then the knocking, and then the touring of property started, man. And we were, no kidding, for dudes out there who think this is such a daunting task. When you think about it, it may seem that way on the surface, but the reality of it is, once you start to get involved and you start to ask some questions, you start to call people and you don't know something, be transparent about not knowing what that is. They're not going to look down upon you and say, hey, you know what, can you explain DSCR, or debt service coverage ratio, or something to me? Anyways, long story short, man, that was kind of our jump into the scene. And we closed on a 14-unit apartment complex a couple of months ago. Super stoked about it, and the future's real bright, man. We're looking at investor relations for syndication and joint ventures going forward.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, it's super
Yeah,
cool.
man.
Yeah, behind that 14 unit, we have a little 8 unit, and
Okay.
I've done like some passive investments in some larger ones, but the 8's the biggest that I have, multifamily wise, that we operate and manage. And it's just such a different process. It's, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but it's intensive on the management side. It's like managing it is as important as anything, because it can be such a difference in how it operates, and, the type of tenant you have there, and they can get out of control fast. So I'm sure, is that something, what does that look like for you guys? You got to keep your eyes on it pretty closely, right?
Most definitely. Yeah. That's a great point, man. A lot of people have it in them, man, to manage the property themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. We have our W-2 jobs in the Air Force, and so we'd be kidding ourselves, man, if we thought we had the time to property manage it, to manage the property. So instead, we manage the asset, kind of manage the manager, if you will. Right. So we have an awesome team here in Tucson. The girl who manages it has her CPM, certified property management license. They're a vertically integrated company. So when I say that, I mean, these guys have their software program doped out. They have on-site general contractors, electricians, plumbers. So the margins in terms of what we pay are going to be in our favor, as opposed to going to find third-party sources to fix things. But you're right, man. One of the struggles we have right now in the area that we purchased, it's kind of a C minus area, C minus property for sure, with some tremendous value add opportunities. But there are transients that walk around the area often. And so one of the complaints that we get from our tenants often is, hey, this guy's hanging out around the back of the apartments, unsavory type character. Can we do something about it? And that's the difficult part, man, because a lot of cities right now, it's difficult to actually impose certain restrictions because cops are so stretched thin in terms of resources and stuff, So I've been working very closely with the Tucson Police Department to ensure that everybody's got the care that they need behind the apartment complex. Just identifying, and this is something we bring to the table that I think a lot of young entrepreneurs should kind of heed, is when you go into this, it's not just a hobby. It can be a hobby, but you're going to get out what you put in. If you put in hobby type time, you're going to get out hobby type experience. You know what I mean? And so for us, this is not a side gig. This is no kidding, our full up business, and we treat it that way. And so along with that, I have weekly meetings with my property manager where I say, hey, Michelle, let's look at the rent roll report for the last month. What's some trend data in terms of maintenance requests? Okay, our evaporative coolers are leaking abnormally high. What's causing it? And then once you do this, man, you get an idea as to what the season looks like for your property. Okay, in the summer months, our evap coolers are going to give us some more issues. In the winter months, it's going to be something else. And so what you do is you then identify those trends, and then you tackle them, man. You put an action plan together. Hey, look, we're going to put PVC piping underneath the evap coolers to prevent that from leaking on the roof. The transients, we're going to put some solar lights. At the end of the day, yeah, it's some operating expenses that are out of pocket, but ultimately it should help diminish the amount of time and effort you have to put towards that property, so you can then free up the brain bites and time for your next endeavor.
Yeah, I love it, man. A couple of things I want to touch on, like when you said it's not a hobby.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I've treated this like as serious as you can for a long time, and you're right. It's a blessing to be able to do what we do, to work in this industry. But you have to go at it hard. And one thing that it's like my pet peeve as of recently is when people say it's hard to find deals. And the reason I say that is because I don't think the people that say that are putting in the time. And if you say it's hard, but you're spending 2 hours a day or 30 minutes a night, well, that doesn't really add up, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
actually putting in the time.
Yeah, exactly.
We have people that are cold calling multiple people all day, every day, and we're finding deals. Like, yeah, we wish we found more, but
Yeah.
it's not really that you can't do it. You just got to put in the work. And that's back to your point of, hey man, this is competitive and this is serious and
Yeah.
this is big money and life changing and generational changing. And it's all possible, but you got to be putting in that work and taking it super seriously.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, man. I think Elon Musk has some good nuggets out there in terms of time and effort put forth towards something. Just generally speaking, it's just like you said, man, if you put 30 minutes a day towards it and it takes you, I don't know, let's say 300 minutes, a couple of 5 hours to find that deal. Well, if you put those 5 hours in one day, you would have found that one deal as opposed to it taking you 10 days to find that deal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's a matter of identifying efficiencies, managing your time appropriately, and then you have to have the drive. But here's something that not a lot of people talk about. You and I have drive to do this, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be here doing this. But sometimes there's a lull in our drive. And I think that's where a strong partnership comes into play. And that's one thing that Pat and I really, really work with each other well on is this concept of, you know what, I may be having a bad day. Hey, we're human beings, man, right? We have flaws. I may be having a bad day. Um, I'm not as hot on the deals today as you are, but that strong partner is going to help lift up the other partner. Hey, Rick, I got this today, man. What are your thoughts on this? Kind of help them out of the hole, if you will. And we all have our struggles. And so for those new entrepreneurs and even seasoned ones, hey, if you guys are going through something, strong partnerships are a tremendous way to get past some of these things to help keep your eye on that prize.
Yeah, I agree, man. I've found a ton of success in partnerships. And, I think another thing is like when you get around the right people and you just kind of know it, probably just like in the military or anything else, like you just have their back and you don't, I think if you get the right people and you trust them and you know what you need to do and you provide a value, like you're good. But when you start to try and measure, hey, I'm doing this, what's he doing, and vice versa, that's just a bad path to get going down. And you just can't think like that. Like your buddy or your partner may go into a depression for 2 months or a year, whatever it may be. But if you're playing this for a 20, 30, 50-year mindset, that doesn't matter, right? Like if you have that right person, if you don't have the right person, that's a different story, but it can be beautiful when you kind of divide it up and conquer.
Yeah, it's an oak tree, man. You sit back, generational wealth. We have the buy and hold strategy. And so it works very well for us. But you're absolutely right. You can't, just because one little season is going to knock you down, you can't get out of the game. And that's where a lot of people get out of the game. And I have these conversations with dudes at work all the time or just in passing, like, hey, you know what? I tried real estate. I said, it's already right there in the sentence. I tried real estate. I tried real estate for a couple of months and the tenant that I had was super bad. And I was like, man, that's unfortunate because that's a real statistic, right? You could get that first really bad tenant or you could get that first really bad property, but it doesn't mean that it's going to continue to be that way. We haven't had that scenario thus far, thankfully, knock on wood. But if you do, and the numbers are right, if you bought it an appropriate way with decent terms, stay the course, man. That's what I say. Stay the course. Something's going to work itself out.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in just jumping in, and I'm the type that doesn't overanalyze. I know the market well, so I kind of know like, hey, this is where I want to be. But I just look at it as do that first deal and then do the next 50, because you're not going to buy one house or even 2 or even 5, most likely, and go retire. You got to get 50, 100, and you're going to have those experiences with the bad tenant. Like embrace it and welcome it and on to the next. Like, I mean, it's, just like anything, like a fight or whatever, like you get punched in the mouth and you just stay down. I mean, what are we doing here? So,
that's awesome, man. I like what you said with the whole jump in, man. A quick story here, if I can. So as soon as we identified that we wanted to do multifamily, we started cold calling folks in town that we knew owned properties. I was driving on a certain part of town several months ago, and I found these in Tucson, we have these things called casitas, little houses, essentially.
Yeah, we got those.
You have them? Okay, cool. So I found these 11 casitas that were owned by a gentleman, and he owned his own property management company. And I thought, somehow I was made privy to his email address or something. Emailed him, he didn't respond. Emailed him, hey, we're serious guys. Like, this is my backyard, Tucson. I'm a pilot on base. I got family here. I don't want you to be scared, because a lot of dudes are scared with out of town investors because they're like, nah, they're not going to take care of the property the appropriate way. Anyways, long story short, called this guy up one night, super short with me on the phone. He said, are you a broker or are you an investor? And I'm kind of new at this, man. This is like my first time talking to somebody about a potential deal. I don't know what I'm doing, And so I'm like, no, I'm an investor. And he said, well, what do you want to pay me? And I was like, well, I don't know. I wasn't prepped for that, like that question right now. I'm like, I kind of have to look at the details of the property. So sure enough, man, I kept him on the phone for like 2 minutes, and he was kind of nice by the end of the phone call. And he said, call me up tomorrow at noon. And he hung up on me. So I was like, all right. I called Pat, my business partner. I'm like, we may have a potential lead. He told me to call him tomorrow at noon. I'm going to call him. And he's like, what are you going to tell him? I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We have to dig a little deeper. So I call him up the next day. He's in a better mood. And so I said, hey, no kidding, man. I'm just going to be real transparent with you. I'm a new investor in town, still learning the ropes, but I'm very interested in your property, and we have the money to close on it. And he said, well, meet me tomorrow at noon. He likes noon. He says, meet me tomorrow at noon to walk the property. And so I kind of moved my schedule around.
Did he hang up on you again?
No, he did not this time. So that would have been good. But I met him the next day at noon. I liked the property, and I said, hey, and I was just straight up, man. I said, hey, what's the next step? I want to buy this property. I didn't know that there was an LOI, and I needed to have a broker, and we needed to be able to negotiate it at a certain rate. And he said, I don't do realtor representation or broker representation, so this is going to be a direct deal. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to do a direct deal like this. You know what I mean? So I said, all right, we're down to do that. We'll figure it out. The pilot mentality that we have, man, is this mentality of, it doesn't really matter what you throw my way, I'll figure it out. And that's something that has a lot of success in when we fly a mission, which is, there's this dynamic environment where you don't quite know what's going to happen, but you have to be ready for it. And you rest back on the training and the knowledge that you have. So I said, okay, let's do it. And he said, I'll have my comptroller get a hold of you and let you know. So he ends up giving us a $600,000 price tag for 11 units. I'm like, this is awesome. For Tucson, these are decent prices per door. So what I end up doing is we accept the offer. We do a purchase and sale agreement. He has a kind of broker on retainer status that he used. But what I didn't realize, man, and this goes back to what you talked about, just jumping in. If I had not have jumped in, I would not have had these tremendous lessons learned. We jumped in and signed the purchase and sale agreement, and then we sent it to our lender, a local lender that we had favorable terms with, but the debt service coverage ratio was too low. Essentially, the amount of money that was left over after gross income, operating expenses, my net operating income, my annual debt service was not kosher, was not sufficient enough to cover that. So we had to fall out of the deal. And we looked like these tremendous rookies who didn't know what they were doing. And to be honest with you, to a certain degree, there was a little bit of that. But had we not have jumped in on that 11 unit, took our lickings, took our hits, we would not have realized or recognized how to approach the second deal. So I think it's so important that you jump in. Even if you don't always know, sometimes you're going to get out of the water and you will be a little bit stronger of a swimmer because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I touched on that as well. I agree with you. Is like,
yeah,
that's why I touched on you're not going to buy one or two or three. You got to get massive scale to make money. Yeah. And I think I don't know, man. I want people to be able to get there, but
yeah,
I've never had this problem because I'm very risk type. I welcome risk, and I have a no fear attitude. That's a big thing that we promote, is like, we believe real estate, there's opportunities for everyone, but you got to have a no fear attitude. And
yes.
You're always going to be learning, but you just have to jump in. And the one thing is, like, there's something there that prevents people from making that first move. But once you make it and you realize, oh, it's not that bad, then it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Yes.
And just like you said about the pilot mentality of just whatever's going to come at you, like, you'll figure it out. You got to have that confidence in yourself. And I guess that would come from putting in the work and understanding things and knowing that you will put in the work to figure it out if you don't. We constantly, and we have this going on right now where we'll have like 3 or 4 deals on the horizon that are like 90 days out or 120 days out that we're supposed to be closing on, and we don't know how we're going to do it, but we always figure it out.
Yeah, I love that, man.
And we secretly like love that. We love having our back
yeah.
against the wall and just having
Yeah.
to make it happen. And if you have to bow out or drop the contract or whatever, it's unfortunate, but it happens. And
Yes.
it's like, I don't know, man. It seems just like people think like you got to just go and do everything perfect, and it's never going to be that way. And
No.
so there's really something to that about just figuring it out as you go.
Yeah.
Even if you've been doing it for 20 years, I mean, there's always going to be something new.
Yeah. And I think the big thing there is when you run across something, it's like there's this book I read, man, when I had just graduated college and I wanted to, kind of change the finances a little bit. It was The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham.
Yeah.
Great book, but not an easy to read, like just peruse through it book with a cup of coffee.
Warren Buffett's guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Warren Buffett's dude, man. So that's the type of book where you read a couple of pages and you have to stop at a concept or a definition and then go look it up. That's the same with this journey. Yes, have the no fear mentality, go in head first, figure stuff out. But at the same time, don't fool yourself into thinking when you run into that roadblock on something you don't understand, you may have to pause for a moment and go look it up. And no kidding, man, I'm talking like go YouTube it. Seller financing. That was one of the first struggles, our master lease option we were looking at. And I was like, I'm in the gym looking up YouTube seller financing while I'm doing some reps. And I'm like, this is awesome. Some dude just explained it to me in 7 minutes. Okay, now I can commit. Now I can keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
just go to the Teifke Real Estate YouTube page.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. I'll start doing that, man.
No, that's cool. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to touch on with your loan or with your apartments is the loan, because sometimes people don't fully understand the difference between like the traditional loan and I'm assuming most likely you went with like a community bank, but
that's correct.
If you could maybe touch on the terms and what that looks like, I think that'd be pretty valuable for people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the community banks, and then you have some national lenders who may not know you as well and are willing to accept a little more risk. So recognize right off the bat, if you're looking for the most competitive term, it's more than likely going to be in your backyard, but there may be some hoops you have to jump through. So I went to a local credit union, and by the way, I never stepped foot in the bank once. I don't know if this was because of COVID or not, but I didn't need to. I signed everything e-sign via computer. So we'll use the terms we'll keep it simple because ours was close to $1 million loan. So I called the bank up and I said, hey, I had listened to a podcast talking about portfolio loans, commercial loans for over 4 units. And I said, I'm interested in a loan for an apartment complex that I'd like to buy. I'd like to borrow $1 million, or I'd like a loan for $1 million. And they said, okay, cool. We'll get you in touch with our commercial loan manager and they'll talk to you. So I spoke to him. I did a little bit of research prior to, but essentially the terms that they provided me were pretty favorable. They were the following terms. A 75% loan to value, or LTV, meaning I come to the table with 25%, they cover the 75%. So in our case, $250,000. 1 point origination fee. So essentially 1% of the price after your down payment is made is what you pay in a fee. Ask to get that wrapped up into the loan if you can. We asked, they wrapped it up. So less money out of pocket for us.
Good tip. Big one.
Yeah.
10 grand.
Yeah, so
save 10 grand in the short run.
Save it in the short run. And you know what? Equity will build. The tenants pay it off
over
time.
You'll probably, I don't know the exact number. You'll pay like, 15 grand on that over the term of the loan, but that's not out of your pocket. And technically the tenants will probably pay it.
Exactly. So other people's money, So 75% LTV, 1 point, no prepayment penalty. So this is huge with credit unions. They can't actually charge you a prepayment penalty. A bank can. And so the prepayment penalty typically is, if anybody's ever heard of the 5-4-3-2-1, the first year you pay 5%, the second year 4%, the third 3-2-1, et cetera. And then after that, the prepayment penalty goes away. So in our case, there was no prepayment penalty, which is very favorable. There was a 4.25% interest rate, and it was a 15-year term with a 25-year amortization. So
good.
Yeah, not bad, right? Not bad for
usually I usually see 10, but actually more so 5.
Yeah, yeah, the 5-year terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got the 15-year term, and I kind of like took a second glance at it because we shopped around, and some of the other lenders were offering us a 30-year amortization, and less of a interest rate, only by a quarter of a point. But they were offering, banks were having the prepayment penalties. The term was significantly less. And right now in this economy, in this market, we think that the 15-year term is going to allow us the wiggle room to really hold that property without having to offload it should we experience a lull, should the market, as
Yeah,
we call
that's
it,
a
roll
big deal,
over
man.
in the pool.
I
You know what I'm
think that's
saying?
a really good couple things that's why it is valuable to talk about it. But
Yeah.
I've honestly I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never even thought to ask to wrap the origination point into the loan.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's probably not a big deal for them to do that. And that's a
No.
great tip.
Yeah, man, wrap it up into the loan and ask this too. So here's the second part about all this, which is awesome. But a quarter of a point is a quarter of a point. So we ended up getting the interest rate down to a 4% flat interest rate with the agreement that we would keep the money in the credit union's checking and savings account. I was like, I don't care. It can go to Bank of America, So when the property manager sends us the money the third week of every month that the tenants have paid, it's incentive for the credit union to keep that money because they have more money on the books. And so ask those questions.
What if you guys obviously can do distributions though and all that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
They just want the rent coming in there.
Yep. Yeah. They essentially just want you to start up a checking or a savings account and then hold a little bit of cash in there.
Yeah.
Which is not bad. So yeah, in the end, 75 LTV, 1 point wrapped up, no PP. The 4.0% interest rate, 15-year term with a 25-year AM. So if you're out there and you're looking, my recommendation to you is call the lender and ask, I'm seeking a loan for $1 million with these terms. We used to see 80% LTVs. They're kind of a thing of the past, I think, right now with everything shrinking down. So it's a little tough to find those. You might be able to find it with a national lender, but when you do that, you're going to pay a lot more of an interest rate. There's going to be a trade-off with that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so the last piece of the loan was a DSCR, or debt service coverage ratio. And this was the cool part. It needed to be a 1.15 or above. And a lot of lenders have a 1.25 restriction.
Right.
Yeah. So this allowed us to get in with a mortgage payment that is favorable enough and that cash flows nicely for our first property.
Yeah, man. I love it.
Heck yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I'm curious about being in the military and kind of understanding what your process is, as much detail as you can, as far as how do you structure things outside of the time you've got to be committed to the military. Is there a very clear plan, like, 30 minutes I do this, 30 minutes I do this, 30 minutes I do this, something like that? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So Pat and I kind of split the responsibilities. Our jobs, I could be flying 3 times a week. Pat's flying 2 or 3 times a week. They're sending me to Minnesota next week on business, TDY. So I'll be flying over there. So it can be difficult sometimes, just as anybody's job can be difficult. So what we do is we kind of mirror our approach to mission planning for a battle, looking at airspace, identifying who the players are and how you're going to fit into the overall scheme of things. And so in the military, we have a kind of a 2-pronged approach. There's a strategic and then a tactical approach. The strategic is the more big picture macro perspective. Here are the players that are involved. Here's what needs to move when. This is the overall objective, and this is the general plan as to how we get there. The tactical approach is the more micro perspective, the asset management. I'm contacting the property manager to talk about the transients behind the apartment complex, the solar lights, the landscaping, the risk analysis, the underwriting. How are we going to come up with this capital and what account is it going to go into? And so for me and Pat, we divvy up the responsibilities quite nicely. Pat handles the strategic aspect. Because Pat has this, mind that is just kind of like always running, man. It's always going. I'll get a text message at 2:00 in the morning and he's like, we need to be thinking about this.
That sounds like me. And my partner, Alex, is the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think I'm more like Alex then, and Pat's more like you then.
You got to have the two different. Yeah.
Yes, you have to, man. You have to have the 2 different mentalities, because if they're both the same, then it's like, we've heard the analogy of the marriage before. It's like, it's going to be boring, So long story short, man, Pat handles the strategic aspect and I do the tactical aspect. I do a little more of the investor relations. I do a little bit more of the cold calling. I'm kind of the mouthpiece for the group. And he does a lot of the back office kind of work, underwriting larger work. So we don't have a set like 30 minutes. We're very fluid. We're very organic. It could be that today, for example, I'm doing the podcast with you, and then I go into work for a couple hours. I may be off at 4 p.m. and I'll look at a property on the way home and I'll make a couple of phone calls. Pat is doing the same thing on the East Coast. So all in all, we're devoting several hours each day to it. And if we have more hours in the day, we devote more hours to it. We keep a shared calendar. And this is where, so my wife is an integral part of the business as well. She has a successful career as an IT director, but she brings a plethora of knowledge to the table and to the business regarding business systems from a Microsoft Dynamics 365 perspective, helping streamline things, generate reports that eventually investors will want to see. Hey, can you generate me a report that details this for the last 3 months? And so I think one of the big things, man, that a young entrepreneur, even seasoned, can do and recognize is implement systems that are going to make things more process efficient for you and for the business, as opposed to just doing it old school. Because when you do it old school, you're working harder, not smarter. And so those kind of those three powers combined, man, we're fairly efficient with the way we do business. We save time, and our work is very concentrated.
I love it, man. Yeah, I'm the same way. We don't have a set, 30 minutes here or there, but I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of military guys think like that, and I don't know if I'm sure that can and works, but it does seem like you just have to be more fluid and flexible in real estate because there's just so many new and random things, like a podcast, and you get out of this meeting and your property manager's calling you and you got to look into that or a broker sends you a new deal or whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think I had a good conversation with an investor who moved from Michigan to Scottsdale, and he had dinner with me the other night. Awesome dude. And we were talking about, what he does with his time now, because he was previously a broker and he is completely, headfirst dove into commercial multifamily real estate. And he has a huge nest egg that he kind of lives off of, and he continues to build that through acquisition fees for the next syndication and the next syndication. Along with the fluid, dynamic, and organic approach to the business, I think one thing, and I've noticed you guys do, I think, a phenomenal job of this, Matt, is the networking as it relates to reach. And look at us now. You're talking to me in Tucson. You're in Austin. I might not physically meet you over the next couple of months. I hope one day to be able to do that, but it doesn't hold us back. It's just a time zone. It's just a couple of hours. And so your network is your net worth. And I kind of hold on to that sometimes. And I think to myself, man, that is awesome, because think about it. Not that people are just always chasing dollars. I personally am chasing freedom, the freedom for time. And it just so happens to be attached to a dollar figure sometimes. But I think along with that, you have to recognize that the networking opportunities that exist out there are absolutely huge, and you have to take advantage of those. Just because you're speaking to somebody, we have an option on our website called Vector Check. And in the military, a vector is like a navigational tool. It's a line that you fly. It's precise. It's accurate. Vector Check allows for us to meet with somebody who has an idea regarding whether it's purchasing a single family residence or multifamily property, and say, Ricardo and Pat, can I just run this by you guys so you can give me a vector check? Tell me if you think I'm on the right track or not.
That's cool.
And it's 15 or 20 minutes out of our day, but it's super beneficial because we've met some very interesting people and we've learned a lot in those conversations.
That's great, man. I love that concept, and I agree. And to touch on this, because I do think it's valuable, is like I saw this 6 years ago about the value of networking.
Yeah.
And I go all out on it. Like I'm literally meet everybody and anybody, and no BS, 3 to 5 every single day for 5 years. And
nice.
The thing that I've found is, like, if you approach those meetings the right way, there's so much value, and you're not looking at it short term, but you stay in touch. And the simplest things, like just do what you say you're going to do, stay in touch, actually care. And it's weird, man. I personally think it's a God thing where, like, we're talking for a reason, and I don't know exactly what that is, but like, I'm actually like super excited to figure out what that is. And maybe it's just for me to get some good advice for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But time and time again, everything kind of comes full circle. And
Yeah.
it's really cool when you start thinking back, you're like, wow, like that led to this. But then you think everything leads to something. And it's the weirdest thing for me. Like I'll go have coffee with somebody and 3 weeks later, I have a listing and he brings me a buyer. And it's like, man, that's weird how that happens so quickly. Sometimes it doesn't happen that quick. But if you can understand that and not be so short-term thinking, which has bothered me in the past, because I've had people that I'll give my time to and I'll meet with them and then I try to stay in touch and they never respond to me. And it's like, man, that was such a waste. And regardless of them, like I just try to be the opposite of that. And it's crazy what can happen. And like you said, who knows, but we're also very blessed to be able to do this. Like we live in a time zone where it's easy to communicate like this, and you just got to put in the time and then, follow a few simple concepts, like stay in touch. How do I add value for you? What can I help with? And things will work out.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right, man. You hit it on the head. You talked about adding value. I think one of the biggest things that I see a lot of dudes try to network with, this mentality of what can I get out of this scenario? And it's difficult, because you get older, you mature, your prefrontal cortex is not yet quite developed. Sometimes you're just after me, but you have to let that go. If you're going to successfully network, think, how can I add value to this relationship? And then organically, it should reciprocate itself. And it may not with one network session. It may not with 3, but it will eventually come to you.
Yeah. And it's true. I believe like over time, if you're just trying to do this for money, like it's not going to satisfy anything. I really believe that. I mean, maybe it will short term, but in the reality of things, like it's not. Money is important and it's just a tool, but it's not the end all be all by any means. I mean, everyone knows this. You can have hundreds of millions and be depressed or whatever it may be. And it's just like,
we see it all the time. Yeah.
And just being in the game and seeing how things work, that's the joy of it, man. It's we have an opportunity and we're just blessed to be. Life's short, right? Like we're here and we're gone, and like live it up, man.
Yeah, YOLO, man.
But just getting around good people and constantly learning, and one concept that I really believe in, and I'm sure you probably do, is you've heard the foxhole term. Like, who do you want in your foxhole? Just find those people and get around them, and that's it. Like if you're spending time around people that you wouldn't want in your foxhole, what are you doing? Like just stop doing that.
Just stop, man. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. That's the way I look at it sometimes, because, and that doesn't mean that, you get out of certain rooms where that's not the case.
Right.
But
keep pushing yourself forward.
Yes. Do recognize where you fit in we can't get too comfortable ever. Do recognize when you're too comfortable in the room. When you're too comfortable in the room, you might want to go to a room where there's a little bit more discomfort, because where there's discomfort, there's growth. And where there's growth, there's the achievement of the success that you want.
Yeah. I love it. So one of the things that we're going to be touching on our YouTube channel a little more and more is this concept of, I don't know exactly what we're going to title it, but kind of going above and beyond and doing that in every aspect of business and in life, really. But like, how do you go above and beyond for showing a client properties? How do you go above and beyond for, raising capital from investors, stuff like that?
Yes.
What would you say for you? Because I know that you do this. Like, what are aspects that you go above and beyond, you and your partner? What do you believe in doing, bigger and better things on, like getting creative, unique? What are those things that are meaningful to you and that you find tons of value for yourself and for investors and your partners and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. There was a documentary by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Lou Ferrigno was in it a long time ago. It's like Pumping Iron or something. You ever see that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So in that movie, in that documentary, Arnold Schwarzenegger said the rep does not start until it really hurts. So you're ever doing something, you're in the gym, you're like, I'm gonna knock out 10 reps. And on the 8th, it really starts hurting. You're like, oh, I got 2 more. The mindset that I want to have going into processes, goals, action plans is that the action doesn't start until that rep hurts, until that 8th rep, right? Where I'm like, okay, this is actually 0 now. Go 1, 2. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll frame it like this. That I now look at things from that mindset, from that perspective of, okay, I've done everything that it takes up until this. When it starts to hurt is when that discipline kicks in, is when I'm going to go above and beyond. So a couple of the things that we've done, our property manager had never interfaced with the Tucson Police Department before from the homeless section. I took it upon myself to contact them to say, hey guys, here's my name. Here's my situation. Do you have any police cars that are in the vicinity that can drive by every once in a while and check on people to be sure they're okay? Lo and behold, they actually have a precinct and a department that actually does that. So I was able to go above and beyond and get my property manager in touch with the Tucson Police Department, that specific division. And now she can offload this to the rest of her properties and kind of help out with that. So that was one little example. Another one is, man, like, no kidding. I don't know. This is just my mentality, but I go into the property management office and I shake everybody's hand who's on the team. I shake Kristen's hand who does payroll. I shake Mary's hand who does utilities. And I speak to Isela, you know, and I go in and I tell them, hey guys, I'm Ricardo. I own Jefferson Avenue. Thank you for doing this work. I really appreciate it. I recognize that there are a couple of tenants who speak Spanish. Do you have anybody on the payroll who speaks Spanish? Because if not, yo hablo español también. So if you need them to contact me, I'd be happy to do that. You'd be surprised, man, that building that relationship, looking them in the eye, shaking their hand, they now want to go above and beyond for you. So recognize that I just went above and beyond by doing something, and I inspired the people who work with me to go above and beyond as well. That's huge, man. It's huge. It's in the delivery. And so, you know, those are just a couple of the things that we're doing. And think about it, like, it doesn't have to be always process based. It can be relationship based. In fact, you can inspire and get the highest level of productivity when somebody is in a positive mindset. You know what I mean? We need to get you a refill on coffee, by the way. But, yeah, me too. But those are just a couple of the things, man. And that's the way I look at it. I frame it with okay, the rep doesn't start hurting until now. This is above and beyond.
That's
and
great.
Sometimes, man, you know, sometimes that's 7 p.m. at night, and I'm like, dang, I just checked the box for today. And you're not going to have every day that you go above and beyond. But just recognize that when that presents itself, okay, it's time to go an afterburner now, if you will. You know what I mean?
That's good, man. And 2 things. We were talking about that. I've been working out with some guys, and they said the same thing. Like, I guess Arnold would max out right away.
Yeah.
And then he would start his workout.
Yeah.
Shoot, I forgot the
He's
second
the man.
thing. Dude, you know, he started kind of making money in real estate.
Yes, I know that. There's a quote that we put, and he was like, I made my millions off real estate or something.
Yeah.
Our
real estate,
man. Yeah. McDonald's does too. There's a lot of huge really large companies that dabble. Not, I wouldn't say dabble, that's not the right word, that have a large arm that is real estate, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the biggest believer in it. My mom was a single mom and raised my brother and I, and ended up having millions of dollars in real estate. And I just believe that it can be for everybody, and people don't understand that. And that's a big part of why we talk about this and preach the message we do, is because it's life-changing, and it changed my life. And you can do it, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take work, and you got to go above and beyond. You have no fear attitude and all this stuff, but it's available for everyone. I can't think of any industry that's anything like it. I mean, you literally can do anything, and it's all out there for you. And it just sucks that people don't realize that. They, you know, I mean, it's education piece for sure, but people think they need, you know, $200,000 in cash to buy a $200,000 house. And it's the simplest thing like that. But it's just a beautiful thing whenever you can get it rolling.
It really is. I agree with you, man. What are your thoughts on, so I've talked to a lot of different people on this. What are your thoughts on the real estate market and encouraging folks to get in with you, as opposed to saying, hey, go elsewhere? Because one recognition that I've had is in real estate, my mindset is there's a plethora of opportunity. Like everybody can get in. I'm not holding anything back. I'm not hiding anything. because there's a little opportunity, there's opportunity for everyone. But at the same time, the market is getting saturated. So how do you balance that when you have someone who comes at you with an investment opportunity or something, but you're like, hey, I kind of want that because it's in Austin or it's in Round Rock and things are growing. How do you guys balance that as a business in terms of letting people in, asking people to come in and invest with you, and kind of, that type of landscape?
As long as somebody has a similar mindset and goals, and I like them, and I think we'll work together, I let everybody in, because I'm trying to do hundreds and thousands of deals. And first of all, on a straight business sense, if I can only do so much alone, and so if I have more people, we can do much more together. Second of all, I really believe in it, and it's not about the money. Truly, like money is a tool, but if anyone wants to invest in any deal with me, I pretty much always let them. You want to throw in money here? Great. Even if I make way less money, because there's just nothing like getting around people and growing together. And that's what it's all about. So really, I think for me, it's everyone's welcome. There's plenty, there's no competition in my mind whatsoever. And, it's also just fun to have more people on the team.
Yeah, I love that, man. I subscribe to the same mindset, because when you help somebody else out, you end up helping yourself out. And what are the three basic necessities, right? My mom used to always say, you need food on the table, clothes on your back, and a roof over your head. Well, we have the benefit and the blessing of investing in one of those necessities. You know what I mean? Other things are changing, shopping malls, hilltop plazas, gas stations, these types of things, they ebb and they flow. Macy's just shut down here in Tucson at the mall, and everybody was shocked about it. But malls are changing. The landscape is completely different from an economic perspective. But one thing that is not changing is that people need to live in a place. You know what I mean? And it's a secured loan. It's one that you can touch. I can't go to Tesla and say, Elon, hey, the stock dropped, man, we need to do this. No, he's not going to listen to me. He's got his own ideas. I can go to my property manager and say, we need to implement these strategies. And you know what? My strategies may suck. They may be terrible, but that's cool, man, because that's my ownership. That's me moving the needle in my life. And that's very fulfilling to me.
Yeah. Beautiful space, man. And you get to meet people and just unlimited growth. So I totally agree. Absolutely. What would be a little rah military type, like give us some advice for entrepreneurs, like just hit us with it, like getting started. What do you need to be thinking about and doing?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So in the military, we have the officer and the enlisted structure. And the officer is somebody who has a bachelor's degree at a minimum, who wears a lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, up to general rank. The enlisted structure is not the same. I went to a meeting. The enlisted structure is non-degree. You start off as an airman and you work your way up to a sergeant, senior NCO, non-commissioned officer. So I went into a meeting the other day, and I'm going to juxtapose these two. There was a staff sergeant who's like a 5-year airman in the Air Force who doesn't have a degree, and then there was a captain. They both gave their briefs on a very similar topic, but the staff sergeant knocked it out of the park, whereas the captain didn't do so well, and it was because of the mindset. And so this is what I have to say: when you approach your next scenario, your next deal, think about it from a mindset that allows you to expand and to achieve the success by asking yourself, by not being bogged down like with questions like this. I don't have enough money. Instead, ask yourself, how can I get that money? I don't have relationships built with lenders in the local area. Don't get that out of your mind. How can I build those relationships? What's the phone number to the lender? What will I say to the lender? And don't get caught in that analysis paralysis. In the military, man, we have to be mission oriented. Unfortunately, today, Pat couldn't make it because he's hacking that mission right now. He's about to scramble an F-16 to go intercept something in the sky, maybe. But the reality of it is the train doesn't stop, man. You got to keep going. Keep your mindset. Stay positive about it. Recognize that if real estate is something that you're serious about, make that your mission. Go accomplish that mission, and when you come back, man, you're gonna have a level of fulfillment that you didn't have before, and that fulfillment is gonna be that fuel to kind of keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, baby.
So I think it's a biggie, man. I think mindset is huge. Tony Robbins said it best. He said, your mentality or your mindset determines your execution. So think about that for a moment. If I just have the right mindset, I'm going to be able to execute on everything that I want. yeah, it may not be the biggest execution at first because I don't have the dollars, but eventually it is going to get big enough that you're going to have that network, that mindset, and the sky's the limit, man.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no limits.
Yeah, yeah. Have you heard, thank you.
You know?
Have you heard this
Yeah.
one? Your attitude, not your aptitude, determines your altitude.
Yes, I have. That's actually really good, man.
Yeah, I like that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, that it's so true though too, man. I would rather go into battle with somebody who has the will over the skill, because skill can be taught, man. Like there are so many people out there, Matt, that are so much smarter than you and me, right? But the reality of it
Speak for
is,
yourself. Just kidding.
sorry, yeah.
I'm
You're
totally
like, nah, I'm the man. No, but the reality of it is you and I, we're willing to grind, man. We're willing to put that work in, that
Yeah.
attitude, that will, and
Yeah,
then the
because the
skill
will
will
doesn't
come.
stop, right? Like the
No.
skill, that's great, but the skill just on its own, there's always someone with more skills. But
Yeah,
when you have the will, like you might
yeah,
not have someone with more will, because if you get to the max level, there's just no
yeah.
stopping.
There's no stopping, man. I had a so quick little story here. When I was stationed in Columbus, Mississippi, I was a instructor pilot. So I would take just new folks in the Air Force who had never flown before, and we teach them how to fly. We teach them how to fly over like the course of 4 or 5 months. Well, we had this one student from Africa, and he was the pride and joy of his family, man. He was like one of 12 kids. He got his degree in chemistry. He had a tremendous mind and this aptitude to him. And when he got to Columbus and he reported in, he had his service dress on, and he stands at attention and he salutes me inside, and I'm like, okay, yeah, have a seat, let's talk. And he's like, he says, sir, he says, it's my absolute honor to be here, and I'm going to do everything I can to learn to fly, because I'm going to go back to my country and make my country proud. And I said, I think that's a phenomenal mindset, man. This guy had never ridden a bike before, mind you. He had never ridden a bike, and the first motorized mode of transportation he gets in is a 1200 horsepower T6 2-seat single engine fully aerobatic aircraft. So I push the power up, man. I release the brakes, we rotate, clean up the gear goes up, flaps go up. I'm cruising out at like 220 230 knots, and we're climbing out at like 10,000 feet. And so I asked him, I said, hey, are you ready to fly? And he said, yes, sir. And so I gave him the aircraft, because I have a stick, a hands-on throttle and stick in the rear of the aircraft, the rear cockpit. He has one in the front cockpit. And it's like, if he moves left, I see mine move left. So I can take the aircraft at any time. So I give him the aircraft. He's all over the place, man. Probably one of the worst flyers I had seen in years, I'm like, man, I don't know if you're going to make your country proud now, but what I'm getting at here is he worked his butt off, man. For like the next 6 months, I always saw him studying. We do something called chair flying, where you put a poster up of a cockpit and you have a knee board out, and you actually act like you're flying, and you imagine, okay, I'm going to rotate to 7 degrees nose high. I'm going to hold that attitude till 100 feet. And once I have this airspeed, gears coming up, it takes 6 seconds. The flaps are coming up. I'm going to lose a little bit of lift. Cool. I'm at 180 knots now. Request this. I'm pushing the power up. I'm at max power or whatever. And so I would see him in the corner of the room doing this, and I would feel bad, man. I'm like, hey, it's like a 3-day weekend. You got to get out of here. And he's like, sir, I don't have any family here. I don't really have a lot of friends, but this is what I'm here to do. This is my job. And so when I went to his graduation, man, I had like a tear coming out of my eye, because this dude worked so hard to achieve his goal. And he was all in, man. He was all in. And it was his attitude that mattered everything. And so
Yes.
he did go back. He made his country proud, and that was his needle. That's what he moved. You got to find what yours is and go all in on it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I respect that mentality so much that literally, like,
Yeah,
I got chills when you're saying that, because
yeah.
I love that underdog and putting in that hustle,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, man. I love it.
All
Good
right,
stuff.
man. Well, hey, what are ways, we're almost at the hour. So,
Yeah.
what are ways that we maybe, or our listeners, can add some value for you?
Yeah. So check us out on vectoredequity.com, www.vectoredequity.com. No kidding. And this is not a hollow, like, email me, Ricardo at vectoredequity.com or Patrick at vectoredequity.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter platforms. Our goal is to provide value added material as well as mentorship to guys and girls who are interested in doing either single family or multifamily. And so when I say, I absolutely mean it. we will carve out 20 minutes of our time to chat with you. I've had a lot of individual conversations with guys and girls over the last couple of months, whereby we try to give them some value added material, and we go into a partnership potentially together. We're currently working one right now on a joint venture with 3 different guys. And so please reach out. And if not, then it's all good. But the reality of it is reach out to someone for that help, because it's out there, and folks are willing to help out.
Amen, brother. Well,
Yeah, man.
Aircraft Commander Ricardo, appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Hey, it's a pleasure being here, brother. Next time I fly into, I've flown into Austin Bergstrom several times. We used to have a lot of T6s out there, but when they let me take the C-130 over there, man, I'll land. I'll call you up, brother. We got to go grab some lunch and a beer or something.
Absolutely. And I got a local guy here in Austin that is an Air Force guy. He flies still.
Okay.
I'll connect you with him. I think it'd be valuable just to talk. But
please.
He's got a hard money lending company, and also does some really creative deals where he actually owns real estate. But who knows? Maybe there'll be something there. I'll connect you with him via email.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, I got a lot of dudes who are interested in seeking hard money, so he might be able to present value to them.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day. And if any of our listeners need to reach out to the Aircraft Commander, and give us any comments, thoughts on this episode. We'd love to dive in and help any way we can. Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely, brother. My pleasure being here.